Is that a trick question? This man was a bona fide scrub. Bona fide scrub.
This dude, I believe he's a bona fide superstar right now.
Right. Oh, well, of course, it's all about winning, baby.
Yeah. Let's get into it with some of the recent news that's still ongoing. We'll start massive news today about Ben Simmons. I want to know your instant reactions when you heard the news. So he's back in Philadelphia, and he's back at the Philadelphia 76ers training facility. Rocked up just before the start of the 76ers Nets preseason game today. The most incredible thing is that they didn't even know he was coming. And apparently he kind of, almost as if he knocked on the door outside the arena there and just said, "Hi, can I come in? I need my COVID test first." And then Elton Brand, the general manager, basically got a call that said, "Hey, Ben Simmons is just outside waiting to be let in," kind of thing. So it's this incredible sequence of events, really, that's still ongoing, obviously. There's a few layers to this that I want to get into. But first of all, what was your instant reaction when you heard the news?
Obviously, wow, first of all. I think he must have seen that with 325,000 or so that he would get fined per training and game that he might miss. And I think, financial common sense came out of there. But I just can't imagine a more awkward situation. All the stuff that's back and forth between both teams, refusing to see one another on the cusp of the season, and now he walks through the door. So I just fear the awkwardness more than anything. And I guess it can only eventuate into who even knows where it goes. Because Ben Simmons, for who he is as a player, he's never been a big drama guy, not like a crazy person like Kyrie Irving. And so when all of this started, I'm still in disarray that the fact he's causing this sort of stir and stink up and he's not returning calls and everything like that. So I don't even know what to expect over these next few days. Did you... in terms of the possibility that he came back to Philadelphia, did that thought ever enter your mind that he could possibly even come back with all that happening?
Yeah. First of all, I'll say that apparently there's some dog, the A-dog in the background that has some thoughts on that somewhere. Obviously has a lot of thoughts to give about the Ben Simmons situation. But no, look, I was completely shocked, to be totally honest, because I just look at myself kind of individually, and as young men, young blokes, I guess, there's still a culture, I guess, of stubbornness around young men around the world kind of thing, and I think it's changing, but I would categorise myself as a pretty stubborn, steadfast kind of bloke, and often it can be to the detriment of us as men, but I honestly thought that once he made this stance of I'm basically definitely not going back to the Philadelphia 76ers, he wouldn't return their calls. They tried to approach him. He said, "Don't bother," basically. I thought he'd hold this line. I really did. And we did the 76ers preview with Sammy Ferguson a few weeks ago now. And I'll give all credit to Ferg because I asked him point blank at the time. I said, "Do you think Ben Simmons will ever wear a 76ers uniform again?" And he responded with, "I think he'll have to." And at the time, I just thought, you're a delusional fan, mate. I thought there was plenty of bias involved in that towards the organisation kind of thing, because obviously he's a Philly fan. I thought he was really delusional. I thought there's just no way that he'll pull on a Philadelphia 76ers uniform again. So when I heard the news today, read the news today, I was completely gobsmacked and shocked. Now, I don't want to take that as people interpreting that I think it's a bad decision, because I actually think it's a good decision, because I think it will increase the chances of an outcome, or at least speed up the chances of an outcome, whether that is he does eventually get traded, or whether that's, I think it's very, very unlikely, but maybe there's a small chance, 2-3% chance out of 100 kind of thing, that he's actually welcomed back with open arms, and he eventually gets to a point where he's like, "Hey, I've got a 4-year contract here. It's actually not too bad. Maybe I'll stick around." I don't think that'll happen, but maybe, there's more chance of that happening now than if he wasn't at the facility, wasn't around the group whatsoever. I think the group will actually, as you said, I think it'll be very awkward, but I think they'll actually bring him back into the group and be okay kind of thing, and support him. I think it's more so going to be the fans. I think he's going to play, and I think he's going to be booed the hell out of. So, do you expect him to play? Because from my point of view, I just don't see a reason why you'd rock up and come to training, obviously go to the arena and whatnot, and then sit out games. I just don't understand why you do that. You play basketball to play. So if he's going to be there, I think he plays, don't you?
Dude, and the fans, I'm so glad you brought up the fans. I was actually listening to a podcast with Kevin Hart this week who said that he's from Philadelphia and he went to games in high school and apparently there was a halftime show and a dog was catching a frisbee and the dog kept dropping the frisbee and the fans started booing the dog. Those Philly fans are ruthless. And my conclusion is business sense. Just you've got the guaranteed money first and foremost. You're in Joel Embiid, when he said, they've kind of built the team around you, I kind of understood where he was coming from. But
isn't that fair? Sorry, can I cut you off there? Isn't that fair enough, though? Because Joel Embiid is just a better player than Ben Simmons. Is that just me? Like, why is that such a negative? Like, does Ben Simmons think he's better than Joel Embiid and that the team should be built around him? Because if he does think that, I think he's delusional.
He does imply that, I guess, with these things that he can almost be. We've talked about how he has a Giannis style game to him, and if the team was built around him, but I don't know if he can. And I wonder how dry was the phone for Rich Paul? Do you think? Because to see Ben Simmons, obviously to trade for him, the Philly weren't going to take a less than a king's ransom, and then you wonder I think teams would have really considered, can I really build my team around? Because I'd have to mortgage my future. I'd have to give away possible stars. Yeah. Do you think that played a big part in them saying, like, rich people like, no, I don't want to trade for Ben Simmons, especially with his attitude now that's come across? Do you think that played a huge part?
A little bit. I heard a really good, I guess, perspective from, I think it was Kevin O'Connor. I listened to a podcast yesterday who they were discussing it before, obviously, all this news came out. And I just kind of wanted to bring this up because I thought it was a great point. Rich Paul is also the manager of Tyrese Maxey, right? And Tyrese Maxey is currently the backup point guard to Ben Simmons at the Philadelphia 76ers. So how convenient, I guess, that Rich Paul basically, I think he was in Ben Simmons' ear, just thinking, basically telling him, just sit out, don't play, we'll find you a trade to another team. Knowing Ben Simmons has already got he's got 4 years remaining, $147 million on his contract, he's got his guaranteed money. Tyrese Maxey doesn't. Do you think Tyrese Maxey's going to get much money if he remains as the backup point guard for the rest of his rookie contract behind Ben Simmons? No. If Ben Simmons leaves and goes to another team, Tyrese Maxey's all of a sudden the starting point guard. In 2 years' time, he turns himself into a really good player with that opportunity, and then the contracts come flying in for him. And Rich Paul is the agent of both players. Like, does that seem just like really convenient? And surely he thought about that. Surely Rich Paul's just like, I'm going to get my player who's already got his massive contract out of Philly so my other player can become the starting point guard and get himself a massive contract in a couple of years.
Good for Biz. And Tyrese Maxey plays fantastic in Philly. In the playoffs as well, he had some great moments as well. So Rich Paul owns the NBA. He's going to be the commissioner of the NBA in a few years' time.
It's an interesting perspective. The last thing I wanted to kind of talk about with you is, how do you think this has or will be framed in terms of good guy, bad guy? Because to me, I think Ben Simmons coming back, I think will frame him and Rich Paul and the management company in a bad light in terms of, for months now, the organisation of Philadelphia and Ben Simmons and Rich Paul have basically been playing a game of chicken. They've been at the poker table, and to me, this news today basically seems like they've completely, like the Philadelphia called their bluff and the 76ers organisation have won out. Because obviously Rich Paul and Ben Simmons thought, if we just give them absolutely no contact, if we be adamant to them that we're not going to rock up to training camp, we're not going to play ever again for that organisation, that they will trade us. Well, they will trade Ben Simmons. I shouldn't say us, but they will trade Ben Simmons. Yeah. And then on the other hand, the 76ers organisation have been like, no, we're going to hold out. We're going to wait for something that we really want. And if not, we think that the financial implications that we will force against you by fining you will eventually bring you back to the team. So to me, it's clearly framed as the 76ers organisation have won this kind of ongoing battle that we've seen for the past few months. But eventually, I guess, we won't have a final answer until Ben Simmons eventually gets traded, whenever that may be, and wherever that may be too, and what kind of pieces they get back for him, I guess.
That's really what all it came down to these past couple of weeks, just who would blink first. But I think the NBA would have been pushed. Like, I reckon the NBA would have said to Philly, like, hold your line. Do not let this become a precedent. But if this just, like, eventuates into him just playing another season, everything goes back to... I'm never going to believe an NBA rumor again. All of this for him to just go back and play another season. But I can't believe it. Actually, we haven't talked about Ben Simmons in an NBA episode as much as we used to, so maybe it's great.
Can I? So, from your point of view, how do you think? So, we both agree that he's probably going to play. How do you think he will play? Is it a case of he's going to actually try and play well and therefore try and make himself attractive to other teams, or do you think he's going to play really badly to the point where he's a complete cancer to the locker room and everyone around the organisation, to the point where he just drives himself out of Philly, which is kind of what James Harden did with the Houston Rockets last season. Harden just rocked up out of shape to training camp and said, I don't give a fuck, basically. And he got traded within a couple of weeks. How do you think Simmons is going to play this?
Because, Harden did come in horribly out of shape, and he was just a locker room cancer from the day one, from both sounds of things. Oh, but Simmons, he's the king of off-season videos. He looked really, really good in those off-season videos he put up. I think he will... I think now that he's, like, I guess Philly has won, as you just said, he's going to try and play better to, I guess, save face. Because if they were right and kind of they show that, you weren't good enough, we couldn't find any trades for you, and he also plays bad, makes his value will tank. I think it will reach the bottom of the barrel. Yeah. So I think he'll have to play well to save any sort of face, because this whole debacle, he's tried to push himself out of his team. He couldn't do it. I imagine the fun was very dry. I don't think many people would have said, yep, I want to answer. So I think the only way to salvage any sort of respect is to play well. Do you think he'll pull a Harden?
No, I actually agree with you. I think that's a good take. That I think there's a bad perspective around Simmons now, the fact that he's actually gone back to the team. Because I personally think that he was going to hold his line and hold his stance, and he hasn't, and he's kind of not caved in as such, but he's lost the game of poker between himself and the organisation. So I think people have lost a bit of respect for him in that regard, maybe.
Yeah, respect.
Yeah, and if he just goes in there and plays really badly, the respect levels are going to get even lower. So I agree with you that I think he's going to have to play well, and then maybe that leads to a trade within the first few weeks of the season. But who knows? We obviously saw Harden play poor. Well, Harden didn't play poorly, but he wasn't really obviously at his best, and he was a bit out of shape and whatnot. But we'll just wait and see what happens.
Imagine if the first game he shoots 3 3, 6 on both.
Maybe he does that. Maybe he's just like, I literally... Because what is it about his three-point shooting? Does he obviously think that people care too much if he misses shots? Because I don't think people do, but maybe that's what he thinks. Maybe he just thinks now, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to jack some shots. But that's funny because that's exactly what Philly want him to do. So, it's a weird one.
So watch his high school tape, watch his college tape. You'll be bamboozled as to the two, night and day, the sort of player that, in terms of scoring anyway, that you see on there. But